Don't touch that now, Vern. Don't touch it. Please, Vern. I'm trapped in this TV. Forever.
As lovable yokel Ernest P. Worrell, Jim Varney clowned his way from local TV to Disney features.
I get invited to a lot of parties at trailer parks, so it may be more effective than I had hoped.
Ironically, the drawling, befuddled Ernest was created by a man whose first love was Shakespeare.
Jim Varney was Hamlet trapped inside the fool.
In the next hour, meet the complicated, driven genius behind Ernest.
I approach a comedy as seriously as I approach a drama.
You'll see how the goofy character was created.
The idea was Ernest was the obnoxious next-door neighbor.
A character loved by the audience and hated by the critics.
It is so obviously an attempt by Hollywood to package a commodity.
Along the way, you'll watch Jim fight a number of personal demons.
He was downstairs, sitting in a lawn chair, drinking out of a fifth of G&B.
Well, he was always wired. A lot of people wouldn't even have known that there was a cocaine problem.
He said that he was the poster child of self-abuse.
In the end, Varney triumphed over all his addictions, except one.
Jim was such an optimist that in his mind he kept saying, oh, it's not cancer. But when that biopsy came back, it hit him hard.
This is the story of a brilliant yet humble man who introduced a nationwide catchphrase and brought to life a memorable character named Ernest. A character who haunted Jim to his grave. This is the story of Jim Varney, the true Hollywood story.
Know what I mean?
On June 15, 1949, in the horse racing city of Lexington, Kentucky, James Albert Varney Jr. came into being. Jim's parents, James Varney, an Army boxing champ turned physical therapist, and his homemaker wife Nancy were somewhat taken aback by the blessed event.
I was kind of a surprise. My mother had me at 43. My dad was 44, and we know what they were doing.
Varney showed up with a healthy dose of spunk and talent. Jim's sister, Sandy McKinney.
When he was a year old, he could sing a song, he could carry a tune, he could read the newspaper when he was 3 years old.
Cousin Ed McCord.
He had a real talent for mimicry even at a very young age. He could say the most ordinary thing and it was funny.
My whole family was real comical. Practical jokes on each other, and we always shared jokes at the dinner table.
My dad was one of the funniest people anybody knew. He was a character. That's where my brother probably got his first taste of humor.
From his mother, Jim inherited a powerful ambition to be an actor.
My mother always encouraged my brother. She was an actress also. And she thought that everything he did was wonderful.
When I was about 8 years old, I started doing children's productions and went into community theater.
Varney's love for acting burned even brighter when he became a film fan in his teenage years. Jim wanted to be just like his screen idol, James Bond.
Probably 14 or 15, he started to smoke. He would cough so much that it would break blood vessels in his eyes. He was smoking without filters even when he was young. I guess because he thought James Bond was cool. And he thought James Bond was perfect. That's probably the reason he started.
In 1964, 15-year-old Jim's life took a dramatic turn after he and his girlfriend Ann Lambert saw the film Beckett.
We came home from the movie, and he remembered the lines. He did a perfect Richard Burton, and he did a perfect Peter O'Toole. It was the first time I realized he had an explosive talent.
My favorite impression is Peter O'Toole. You remember the scene in Beckett? Well, Thomas Beckett, are you quite satisfied? I am naked at your tomb, and your monks are coming to flog me. What an end to our story.
Varney's nascent talent did not go unnoticed at Lafayette High School. Speech teacher Jim Combs.
His drama teacher, and very much his mentor, was a lady by the name of Mrs. Thelma Beeler. Jim, through Mrs. Beeler, learned to develop a great love for Shakespeare. At the State Drama Festival, on several occasions he was named Best Actor, which meant he was the top actor in the state on the high school level.
But the top actor was a mediocre student, and by his junior year, something of a rebel. Lexington Herald leader newspaper columnist Don Edwards.
It was the 60s. He wore a black leather jacket. He was often getting kicked out of high school. It wasn't anything very terrible by today's standards, something like maybe wearing clothes that were too tight.
In the spring of 1968, Jim decided he couldn't wait any longer. His future was calling.
He told me that he left high school a semester short of graduation because he had a chance to go to the Barter Theater in Virginia as a working actor. Acting consumed him. He wanted to act more than he wanted to go to college.
At the prestigious Barter Theater in rural Abingdon, Virginia, 19-year-old Varney appeared in a series of summer stock shows. And by the fall of 1968, Jim was ready for the big time. But the big time wasn't ready for him.
I had $60, and I drove to New York City. I stepped over a body the first day there.
I think he was just a little bit surprised how big New York was. He lived on oatmeal and potted meat. We were a little bit worried about him.
Varney did some stand-up comedy and dinner theater in the city, but his career failed to ignite. Then, in the summer of 1972, the disappointed 23-year-old returned to Kentucky and began working at the famed Pioneer Playhouse, a regional theater located in Danville. Playhouse founder Eben Henson immediately recognized Varney's potential.
He was a tremendous talent, and I might say that Jim Varney is the most unusual actor we ever had here, because Jim Varney could mimic any actor in Hollywood.
At Pioneer Playhouse, Jim wowed the crowds in a musical called Fire on the Mountain.
He stole the show with his singing and with his jokes. It became so popular we had standing room only for 2 solid weeks.
Then in the fall of 1972, Jim auditioned for 24-year-old John Cherry, a Nashville, Tennessee advertising executive. Cherry cast Varney as Sergeant Glory in a local TV commercial. It was the beginning of a long and profitable relationship. Coming up, the birth of a legend.
You should have told go Ernest first, know what I mean?
Former high school drama star Jim Varney dreamed of becoming a serious actor. Ironically, he found success by being anything but serious.
Comprendo déjà vu.
Beginning in 1972, Jim Varney's Sergeant Glory commercials for Purity Dairy took the Nashville television market by storm. The success of the advertising campaign gave 23-year-old Varney the confidence to try his luck in Hollywood.
I decided I wanted to go out to L.A. because there was a trend of young comics. It was really exciting. I came about 73, 74, and I started working at a comedy store and some clubs in town. It seemed like every comic that left New York went out and hit it rich in L.A.
But during the 1970s, Jim's career was more miss than hit. Stints on TV shows like Pop Goes the Country and Johnny Cash and Friends didn't gain Varney much attention. While Jim's career seemed stuck in neutral, his love life flourished. During a trip back to Lexington in 1976, Varney ran into an old flame, Jackie Drew.
His sister called him in L.A. and told him that I was getting a divorce, and he called me up and said, "I'm coming home for Christmas, and would you meet me?"
Jim and Jackie, who was also a part-time actress, embarked on a whirlwind courtship.
We got together, had a bottle of wine, and he asked me to marry him.
On Varney's 28th birthday in June 1977, Jim and 26-year-old Jackie tied the knot in California. For the next 4 years, Jim ping-ponged through supporting roles in various sitcoms. In 1980, 30-year-old Varney appeared on the infamous NBC variety show bomb called Pink Lady and Jeff. Producer Marty Croft remembers how Jim drove his Asian co-stars completely nuts.
Jim would always do double talk, double talk Japanese, and then he'd have them crying, wetting their pants over Jim Varney's humor.
Then an actor's strike in 1980 threw most of Hollywood out of work. Jim was forced to return home and find a real job.
I drove a steel truck for a while, hauling steel, which is dangerous stuff. Steel is very unforgiving. If you hit something, it just keeps going and you don't.
Ad executive John Cherry.
He came back and he was broke. and he came over and he said, "You got something for me to do?"
John Cherry said, "I've got an idea for a commercial character." It was right in the nick of time.
And I said, here, read this. And that was the first Ernest commercial.
It wasn't exactly Shakespeare or even a network sitcom, but Varney was desperate for work.
We created the first Ernest commercial for Beach Bend Park because the park looked so bad we couldn't show it. They were very low budget. You know, we had hardly any money, and the client never paid for them.
The ad, shot on Cherry's back porch, was a success.
Hey, Vernon, watch this. Look just like JR, don't it?
It worked, and the next one worked, and the next one worked. Pretty soon, we were up to hearing clients and cranking out the commercials.
Over the next few years, Ernest became a regional phenomenon. Former marketing VP Roy Leitner.
A lot of people thought, well, yes, Ernest is funny, but will he work? Will he sell a product? Trout Dairy averaged 10% sales increase every year. The president of the dairy took me through a big new addition to their plant. He said, this is what Ernest built.
A team of advertising copywriters churned out the zany spots, which were filmed at Cherry's house. Writer-director Coke Sams.
The Ernest commercials were shot handheld, verite, in your face, wide lens, jam it in there. It was really different for television at the time.
Our record's 26 in one day. That's 13 minutes in one day. That was a long day.
As Ernest P. Worrell, Jim Varney was a sensation. Few realized the goofy know-it-all was actually based on a real person.
When we were first writing this character, there was a man that worked with my father in an electrical warehouse over here. To me, was the most obnoxious person that I had ever met. He was the guy that knew everything about everything, knew nothing. So I named him Ernest.
The commercials also featured Vern, Ernest's off-screen buddy and sounding board.
We had so little budget that we really couldn't afford another actor. So we came up with the idea that the camera was the actor.
Ernest was the obnoxious next-door neighbor, and Vern was the more sedate foil. And Jim May, because he had the camera on his shoulder, was always reacting, moving, dodging, playing off of Jim the whole time. And it was a wonderful partnership. They were like dancers together.
Sometimes, though, the dancers slipped.
There was one commercial where I would throw darts. Jim would duck into the frame. I would throw a dart, he'd duck out. And so it was this timing thing. And one day he zigged when he was going to zag. And so a dart just misses him. And you could hear a pin drop.
Coming up, Jim Varney tries to escape from Ernest.
It really does kind of invade your life.
In the early 1980s, journeyman actor Jim Varney struck gold when he became lovable klutz Ernest P. Worrell. But as Varney's fame grew, so did his resentment.
It's like he sold his soul to the devil. He made these commercials, and they haunted him.
By 1983, 33-year-old Jim Varney was riding the crest of the Ernest wave. But behind the scenes, Varney struggled with fame's inevitable side effect. People thought he was Ernest P. Worrell. Director Penelope Spheris.
He didn't want to be Ernest. He didn't want to have to go, hi, Vern, and he didn't want to, like, every time he walks out in public, somebody says, hey, Vern, or hey, Ernest. He used to laugh because they would get it mixed up and call him Vern, you know. He goes, why can't they get it right?
It's very hard to have a private life. People remember you more as the character than they do the actor that played the character. That can get a little tedious, especially in serious situations. You don't want to go to a wedding with a lot of people who have had too much beer. All of a sudden you're everybody's buddy. And where's your hat?
Newspaper columnist Don Edwards.
After Ernest, he seemed less accessible. And frankly, I didn't think he seemed nearly as happy as when he had been struggling. Now he was shooting commercials. He told me they were getting $7,000 to $10,000 a pop for each commercial they shot. So he was making a lot of money. He had commercial success, but I don't think he had artistic success.
In 1983, Varney capitalized on the popularity of the Ernest commercials by doing a TV special called Hey Vern, It's My Family Album. Director John Cherry.
Jim played all the characters that were in the family album. He played one, Davy Worrell, where he was the only guy in the fort, and the Indians were all around. So he had to convince the Indians that there was a whole regiment.
Okay, Captain, have your men sound off. Yes, sure, Major. All right, men. You heard the Major.
In the summer of 1983, Varney landed a non-Ernest role as Evan Earp in The Rousters on CBS. But what was great for Jim's career was terrible for his marriage. Former wife, Jackie Varney.
Jim and I split up when he did The Rousters. I'd gotten to the point in my marriage I felt left out, sidelined, lonely. I said, Varney, I want a divorce. And he said, why, Jack? I said, because I've met somebody else. You get the career, and I guess I'll take the love.
Jim and Jackie were officially divorced in January 1984. Jim's close friend, Del Allman, stopped by one night to make sure his buddy was okay.
He was downstairs, sitting in a lawn chair, drinking out of a fifth of J&B, and he was crying. And so I sat there with him and had a couple of drinks. He was still sad about the breakup of he and his wife. That's what was eating at him.
Varney didn't have much luck with The Rousters either. The show was canceled in 1984 after one season. To make matters worse, Jim's father had a sudden heart attack and died in January 1985. Varney's attorney and close friend, Bill Hoot Gibson.
He became very depressed. It was very difficult for him. He absolutely idolized his father.
Jim's spirits picked up in May 1985 when he was invited to appear as Ernest in the celebrity car parade at the Indianapolis 500. Commercial producer Lynn Johnston.
We were 2 cars in front of Mickey Mouse. The Disney characters were the theme of the parade that year.
Nobody paid much attention until Ernest went around in his car, and 500,000 people said, hey, Vern.
He was this character that was upstaging Mickey Mouse, and it's not too many people who can do that.
Disney's top executives were stunned.
In the audience was Jeff Katzenberg and Michael Eisner. They said, who's that guy?
Disney chief Michael Eisner was not one to ignore an obvious opportunity. He instructed his lieutenant, Jeffrey Katzenberg, to sign Jim for his first studio film, Ernest Goes to Camp. To keep busy while he waited for the Disney project to start shooting, Jim worked on a more offbeat vehicle. In 1986, Cherry directed Varney in the outrageous independent film, Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam.
Dr. Otto was Jim's favorite character, who was pure evil with no backstory for being evil. It was just a gift.
That was wonderful. Not only was it successful, it was ruthless and completely unnecessary.
Jim was perversely proud of his work in Dr. Otto, but Varney and Cherry knew that Ernest was their real meal ticket. The proof came when Disney released Ernest Goes to Camp in 1987.
Total budget for Ernest Goes to Camp was $3 million. And it did $27 million at the box office domestically. Net rentals overall was $35 million, and the studio got all that money. Disney was quite happy with it.
But film critics were not huge Ernest fans. Columnist Anderson Jones.
It is so obviously an attempt by Hollywood to package a commodity. You know, Jim worked in commercials, Jim worked in ads, so now let's take that commodity and exploit him in a movie. You know, we're going to build a 2-hour movie around this character who's funny for 30 seconds.
The strain of being Ernest was beginning to show on Varney. In addition to films, he was still cranking out commercials and making dozens of personal appearances. Soon, Jim was doing anything he could to keep going.
He was always wired. A lot of people wouldn't even have known that there was a cocaine problem.
I never discussed any cocaine issues with him at all. He kept it from me. I knew about it. It was pretty obvious from the guys that were hanging with him. And I never told Jim I knew.
He was drinking a lot. He had a problem with cocaine, too. There was a lot going on in Jim's life, and I think he had a lot of trouble coping with it.
Varney's family and friends either didn't know about his drug use or didn't want to know. Jim's sister, Sandy McKinney.
I wouldn't say he had a problem with alcohol. I never knew of him using cocaine. That's news to me.
Cousin Ed McCord.
I never saw Jim do hard drugs. He smoked marijuana when he was younger, but I don't know anything about anything other than that.
I used to travel with Jim a lot when he would do his personal appearances, and he would bring marijuana with him on road trips.
All I could do was pray that he found his way through it.
But Varney didn't seem the least bit worried.
It wasn't something that he hid. When he was out and around people that did drugs, he joined with them.
Coming up, Ernest nabs an Emmy.
Varney always wanted to win all the awards.
In 1987, Jim Varney went mainstream with the box office hit, Ernest Goes to Camp. But in real life, Ernest needed to go cold turkey.
Other folks that were in the entertainment business went to rehab houses. He never did.
After the success of Ernest Goes to Camp, Disney execs quickly signed 38-year-old Varney to star in Ernest Saves Christmas. Director, Coke Samms.
The ideas got bigger and bigger. Disney was spending more money. They wanted more outlandish material. It was a lot of fun.
But Jim had his own definition of fun, according to commercial producer Lynn Johnston.
After a really long day, whether it was a commercial day or whether it was a location day or whether it was a travel day, once we had been together for 10 or 12 hours, we were anxious for our own space. And I would pretty much put him in his hotel room and know that he would end up in a bar pretty soon.
Jim's attorney, Bill Hoot Gibson.
He could work and be fantastic during the day, but then at the end of the day, he would want to go out drinking, having a good time, shooting pool, doing just stuff like that, but he could do it all night long. I mean, he loved to party.
Varney loved his toys, too. With his earnest earnings, Jim bought an isolated farm in White House, Tennessee, and 2 new sports cars. Close friend, Del Allman.
He wanted to show me how fast his DeLorean would go, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, we got out on the interstate and we started flying down the highway. I saw the speedometer when we passed the highway patrolman, and I thought it said 142, but he swore it was 148.
Jim cruised in the fast lane. He lived for fast cars and fast women. Until he met Janie Hale, a former hotel desk clerk.
Jim wanted to go out with me because I didn't know who he was.
When Jim met Janie, that was the best thing that could have happened to him. She's a good person, and she's not selfish at all, and I think Jim needed that.
Varney fell in love. On June 11th, 1988, 4 days before he turned 39, Jim married 23-year-old Janie at his Tennessee farm.
We had an outside wedding, and while they were waiting for me to come out, Jim looks over and his mother's down here. He looks at her and he goes, "Mama, what are you doing here?" You know, always the eternal cut-up.
New bride Janie was excited about her honeymoon, but for Jim, work came before play.
We actually, the next day, had to leave for Los Angeles because Jim had to be at the CBS Affiliates Dinner because his Saturday morning show was going to start. That's actually our honeymoon.
Before he could shoot the kids program, Varney had to fulfill his commitment to Disney. In July 1988, Ernest Saves Christmas began production in Orlando, Florida. Director John Cherry ran into some unforeseen problems.
We got the reindeer, it's July, and their horns fell off. We had reindeers with no horns, they looked like horses.
In between movies, Cherry and Varney kept the Ernest juggernaut rolling.
When we finished shooting Ernest Saves Christmas, we came right here to Nashville and started shooting the television series. Hey Vern, it's Ernest.
We did 13 weeks of Saturday morning television for CBS. Jim was doing a series of characters. It was closer to Monty Python than to anything else.
Even though he was busy taping the kids' show, Varney kept pumping out commercials in his spare time. Jim loved the money, but hated the grind.
We had to have somebody to get him to show up on time.
Many a morning I would be sitting on the side of his bed trying to wake him up, pumping coffee into him.
Like it or not, Varney had become a commodity. Ernest fans seemed to be everywhere, and that was a big problem for Jim.
This guy came up, and he had had a few drinks, and he sat down next to Jim and started eating his sandwich. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And he was giving him the old, "Hey, Vern," know what I mean?
That's what bugged him most about being known as Ernest, because everybody thought he was this dumb country bumpkin who didn't have any sense. And the truth of the matter was he was probably borderline genius.
Varney may have had mixed feelings about his famous alter ego, but when Ernest Saves Christmas opened big during the 1988 holiday season, Jim basked in the glow.
Ernest Saves Christmas was, in my opinion, the best one of all the Ernest pictures. We made it for $6, and it did $31 million at the box office.
The good news continued. In June 1989, Jim won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Performer in a Children's Series. At long last, Ernest had earned some respect. Coming up, listen to a story about a man named Jim.
It's a long way from Kentucky to Beverly Hills, but I believe it was worth the trip.
By the end of the 1980s, actor Jim Varney had become, for all intents and purposes, Ernest P. Worrell. Varney loved and hated his alter ego. He loved the money and fame, but hated the cornpone stigma that came with the character.
I get invited to a lot of parties at trailer parks, so it may be more effective than I had hoped.
In 1990, Jim Varney starred in his third Disney film, Ernest Goes to Jail. Director Coke Sams.
He's a juror in the jury box, and he starts listening to testimony, chewing on a pen. And that's probably all the script says. He was truly a genius at taking a little bitty thing and embellishing and embellishing and embellishing until it was so you couldn't stop laughing.
Aside from feature films, Varney continued his prolific commercial work. The schedule was hectic, a boon for his pocketbook, but hell on his marriage.
He'd be going here, I'd be going there. And I think not seeing each other, not spending a whole lot of time together, we started to grow apart.
Jim's attorney, Hoot Gibson.
The year that he married was the busiest year he's ever had, doing movies, doing the Saturday morning television show for CBS, and it was a real strain. I mean, he was working very hard, working long hours.
I kind of felt like if it was meant to be, it would have worked out.
But it didn't, and after 3 years of marriage, the couple divorced amicably in 1991.
We decided that the best thing to do was to go back to the way it was before. Above everything else, Jim was my best friend, and I could not stand the thought of losing that.
Jim continued to do more commercials, more personal appearances, and another film, Ernest Scared Stupid. Off stage, he partied hard and smoked up a storm.
Jim had smoked ever since the first day I knew him. He literally smoked one cigarette right after another.
The way I thought about Jim smoking is the way I thought about Frank Sinatra smoking or Dean Martin smoking. These guys that you would always see with a cigarette and a drink in your hand. It was part of the personality, part of a character.
In 1992, Varney was honored for his outstanding contributions to Tennessee. Jim's hard work and abilities were at last being recognized, but he still had a tough time shaking the Ernest image. Actor Bill Burge.
It was difficult for people and producers to see him in another role, but he got typecast in the Ernest character, and it was hard to get away from that.
Varney's frequent co-star, Gaylord Sartain.
People always say, is he really like that? Which always irked me, drove me crazy. You know, like, what do you mean is he really like that? Does he smash his fingers in the window and fall down every time he stands up? No, of course not. You know, Varney was a multi-level creature.
Jim made a career out of being Ernest, so he rarely had to audition. But in 1992, Varney decided to read for the 20th Century Fox movie, The Beverly Hillbillies. Director Penelope Spheris.
I met Jim when he interviewed for the lead role in The Beverly Hillbillies as Jed Clampett. And some of the executives thought I was crazy. You can't use this car salesman guy to play the lead in one of the nation's treasures, The Beverly Hillbillies. And I said, well, I needed to use him. I have to use him. He's the guy.
Beverly Hillbillies co-star Diedrich Bader.
It's completely different from Ernest. Ernest was, this well-meaning idiot, and Jed had this real country wisdom about him.
It was walking a thin line, actually, not being a caricature and yet pulling off the original as best you could.
Despite mixed reviews, the Beverly Hillbillies grossed more than $44 million in the U.S. That was in sharp contrast to the dwindling box office numbers for the Ernest films. In 1993, Disney ended the working relationship with Varney and Cherry.
Disney did not see the continuing franchising. I was fiercely independent, and I wanted to make them independently.
So Cherry and Varney began making a string of straight-to-home video releases, beginning with Ernest Rides Again in 1993. Later that year, Jim co-starred with Dennis Quaid and Deborah Winger in the quirky comedy Wilder Napalm. Then, in 1994, 45-year-old Varney faced a serious setback when his mother passed away. Her death, combined with an avalanche of bad reviews for Ernest Goes to School, spurred Jim to seek solace in one of his favorite vices.
I do recall one night of incredible drinking. It was about 4:30 in the morning or something like that, and I finally turned to him and I went, Jim, I like to drink as much as the next guy, but you really drink. And he goes, well, Dietrich, I'm half Cherokee and I'm half Welsh. What choice do you think I had?
Varney's frantic schedule never eased up. He even visited the 1994 Cannes Film Festival to promote the Beverly Hillbillies.
Raspberry. See? She understood. And I'm an American. And when she comes to America, we can confuse her.
Back in the States, Disney was looking for voiceover talent for the upcoming animated feature Toy Story. Jim's voice had a deep Southern quality, so the producers hired Varney to bring life to the character Slinky Dog. From all appearances, Jim's career seemed to be peaking. Unfortunately, his health was going downhill. Coming up, Jim faces the Big C.
Jim was such an optimist that in his mind he kept saying, oh, it's not cancer. But when that biopsy came back, it hit him hard.
Ernest was Jim Varney's albatross, but as long as the role generated paychecks, Varney kept plugging.
I think Jim was definitely in a gilded cage. I mean, he made a lot of money doing Ernest.
At the end of 1995, 46-year-old Jim Varney appeared in his 7th Ernest film, Slam Dunk Ernest, co-starring basketball legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. John Cherry again independently produced, directed, and released the film on video.
After Slam Dunk, I said, we're through making Ernest films.
Cherry later changed his mind, but meanwhile, Ernest could still move product and even educate the public.
And Vern, if you'd exercise a little more, that life-saving seatbelt of yours wouldn't fit you quite so snug. Vern, why are you getting that over there, Vern?
In between commercials and features, the multifaceted Varney explored his various interests.
Jim had many ways to escape. He had several different hobbies, one of which was knife collecting. He would go to pawn shops and find knives and watches, and he was the type of person that if he got interested in something, he would read everything he could on that subject.
Still, Jim's hobbies couldn't always distract him from his depression and loneliness.
He'd have his ups and downs. He finally went to see somebody and got put on some medication.
By the mid-90s, with the help of an antidepressant called Wellbutrin, Varney seemed to have made some peace with life, and with Ernest.
The drug that he was taking for his for depression really made him feel a lot better.
Varney also combated the blues with yet another passion, singing. Country western star Vern Gosdin was Jim's musical mentor.
He found out I was a writer. He said, let's get together and write some. We wrote several songs together. I heard him sing when we were writing together. And he had some tapes where he went in the studio and cut some tapes. Just knocked me out. I mean, he's really good.
Time just flies, the show it ends too soon.
Jim not only sang country music, he lived the country life too.
Varney loved to go hunting. I don't think he ever killed anything in his life, but he loved to get away that way, just in nature, to be out there. And I think it brought him back to just being a very simple person, because that's what he thought he was.
But Varney's love of the outdoors did not lead to a healthier lifestyle. By the end of 1996, Jim's 33-year smoking habit had become a deadly addiction.
He would start coughing and his face would just be blood red. In fact, he couldn't get his breath. We knew then that he had a real problem breathing because of the cigarettes. But as soon as he would quit coughing, he'd light up another cigarette. And he smoked cigarettes without filters for years.
Jim ignored his nagging cough and pushed ahead. In the fall of 1996, 47-year-old Varney landed a guest role as Prince Carlos on 2 episodes of ABC's Roseanne. He also appeared in smaller independent films, such as 100 Proof in early 1997. But Jim couldn't milk the bit parts like he did the Ernest cash cow.
Many people asked Jim, well, how much have you made being Ernest? And his response was, I own a chain of small towns in Ohio.
I know he liked Ernest at first, but he got tired of it after so many years. He told me one time, I'm 48 years old. I'm a little old to be doing Ernest.
But Jim was a good soldier, so in 1997 he re-enlisted yet again for 2 more films, Ernest Goes to Africa and Ernest in the Army. Director John Cherry soon noticed there was something wrong with Varney.
We were out in the dunes shooting the battle scenes, and I would have him run up the hill to jump in the truck or something, and he could do 1 take maybe.
In the spring of '98, he went out to do the movie Treehouse Hostage. And he called me one day and he says, I've had 2 bloody noses, and I'm coughing up some blood.
It was wrong. You could hear the coughing going. He was reluctant to go see a doctor.
When Jim finally relented, his physician came back with devastating news.
There's this foreign object up in his right upper lung. Jim was such an optimist that in his mind he kept saying, oh, it's not cancer. But the first day that thing showed up in his lung, he put down cigarettes and never touched them again.
He stopped smoking, but it was too late.
Biopsy results indicated that 48-year-old Varney had a malignant growth in his right lung.
His reaction to that diagnosis was, I'll just beat this. What do I need to do? How can we fix this? And he did everything that he could after he found out.
Then Jim made a courageous decision. After cigarettes, Ernest would be the next to go.
When they first diagnosed his lung cancer, he said, Ernest is dead, but I'm not. And I said, why? And he said, well, Ernest takes a lot out of me to do those, so I'm not going to be doing that character anymore.
Coming up, Ernest Goes to Heaven.
You know, you wish that he had had time to do all that he was capable of, because it really felt like he was just getting started.
No one was more shocked than chain-smoking Jim Varney when a tumor was found in his lung. Jim faced his diagnosis with humor and determination, but he could not escape his inevitable fate.
He lived to excess, and he no doubt paid a price for it. But, you know, you get 1 trip through the theme park and you live it the way you want to.
By the end of summer in 1998, 49-year-old Jim Varney wasn't sure how much time he had left, but he was sure he wanted to do one last serious movie role. An old friend, actor and director Billy Bob Thornton, came to the rescue. Thornton cast Jim as Uncle Hazel in his film Daddy and Them.
To Jim, this was the most important thing of his career. Billy Bob managed to arrange the shooting schedule so that Jim could shoot all of his scenes in 2 weeks. He did a great job in this movie. Nobody knew he was sick.
Then, in September 1998, Varney underwent surgery to remove 2/3 of his right lung. The prognosis was grim.
They took a tumor out of him the size of a softball. Weighed 2 pounds, I believe.
He actually had a piece of the tumor piercing his heart.
Despite massive doses of chemotherapy, Varney's cancer spread from his lung to his brain. But Jim kept fighting. In November 1999, he somehow found the energy to attend the premiere of Toy Story 2 in Los Angeles.
He wanted to be able to walk down that red carpet, go in the theater. He didn't want to be treated like an invalid. So it was very important for Jim to do.
All of the dignitaries were there, Michael Eisner, everybody's there, all the stars in Toy Story 2. And as the curtain is raising, Jim leans over to me and says, "Hoot, it's been a great adventure."
As Varney's strength ebbed, he found comfort in writing songs with his buddy, Vern Gosden.
When the roll is called up yonder, when this life is over and through, and they lay me 6 feet under, maybe then I'll be over you.
Varney hung on until the turn of the century. He passed away at his farm in White House, Tennessee on February 10th, 2000. Jim was just 50 years old.
His last words before he died, he said, "Did you open the window?" So I guess he felt like he was going to heaven.
Jim Varney was laid to rest next to his parents in their hometown of Lexington, Kentucky. A few days later, his colleagues and close friends held a memorial service in Nashville. Many tales were told about Jim that day, none more touching than those about his unpublicized charity work.
A lot of kids, their last wish was to see Jim or Ernest. But if he couldn't get to a child, he'd call him. There was one little girl that had a brain tumor, and she couldn't speak. But her dad held the phone up to her ear, and Jim talked to her. And he said she just smiled. Jim was like magic to these kids.
The Varney family is determined to share such stories and keep Jim's memory alive. His sisters are writing a book they say will reveal their brother's complex nature.
Jim Varney, Behind the Rubber Face, was the first title we thought of.
Indeed, Jim Varney was much more than the rubber-faced Ernest. Just before he died, Jim started the Varney Foundation, which offers scholarships for struggling actors. Throughout his life, Jim Varney helped countless people, but sadly, he never listened to his own advice.
Gosh, Vern, you trying to kill us all? Walking around all the time with that weed hanging out of your mouth? Don't you know how deadly that thing is? You're just asking for a case of the Big C, Cancer City, Chemotherapy Hotel. I care about you, Vern. That's why I'm warning you. You better give up them cigarettes, buddy, or the groundhogs will be bringing you your mail. Know what I mean? So, Vern, don't forget, squeeze your tomatoes, trust Roberts for your dairy products, and answer the phone. Hello? That's not very funny. Now this is funny.